Hello, everyone. I'm Jerry Willis. Florida's fight over voter fraud is going to court to try to remove a roadblock. The federal government, the feds demanding Florida stop its voter roll purge. Now, the move comes after the Sunshine State requested use of Uncle Sam's database to weed out non-citizens, felons, even dead people. Republican Governor Rick Scott of Florida is defending the purge and plans to sue the Department of Homeland Security for access. I spoke to the governor earlier on why this issue is worth defending.
Well, look, my job as governor is to enforce the laws of the land. Part of the law is that you as a Florida citizen or U.S. citizen, I don't want your vote to be diluted. People that are not a citizen don't have a right to vote. So we did a small sample, and we found out that it's refutable that people are voting in our state that don't have a right to vote. They're registered to vote that don't have a right to vote. My job is to enforce the law. We've been asking for 9 months for this database from Department of Homeland Security, which would allow us the best available data to know who has a right to vote in our state. They, for whatever reason, elected not to give it to us. I still hope we can work with them. So today, this afternoon, the Florida Department of State will be suing the Federal Department of Homeland Security for access to that database. We have a right to the database.
Right.
It says in the law that we can use it for voter registration.
And the federal government has been denying you this information. What you're trying to do is essentially scrub the Florida voter lists for people who shouldn't be voting. Now, it's been highly controversial in your state, and as a matter of fact, some critics have said that you're treating legitimate voters as criminals. What would you say to that?
Yeah, not one person that has a right to vote has been kicked off the voter rolls. Not at all. It's a simple process. We took a small database and we gave it to the supervisor of elections. They sent it out and said, you've got 30 days to respond. If they didn't respond, then it goes into the newspaper. Even then, if they were taken off the voter rolls and they show up at on election day, they get to file a provisional ballot. So, but not one person has been kicked off the voter rolls that has a right to vote. Not one. But you know what? We have non-U.S. citizens that we know are registered to vote and we know have voted. That's wrong. It's a crime. It's not right. I want honest, fair elections in our state.
And, of course, this isn't really about illegal immigration and illegal immigrants voting in our elections when they should not be allowed to vote. That seems to me at the heart of your issue is who's voting and should they be allowed to vote.
Yeah, it's about non-citizens registering to vote in our state and then voting in our elections when they don't have a right. It dilutes somebody else's vote that has a legitimate right to vote.
Governor, let me ask you this question. So you started with a small sample is what you said. And as I understand it, if I have this correct, it was less than 3,000 people whose background was taken a look at, and only some 40 were found to be non-citizens. Do you think this is a widespread problem? I mean, why is this registering on your radar right now? Your critics are saying that, in fact, you know, it's election time, Florida's a swing state. How do you respond?
Well, we started this last year, and we started asking for the database from the Department of Homeland Security, which would have made it easy to do this. When they kept stalling, so we used our own Department of Motor Vehicle and scrubbed it, and we sent it out to the supervisor elections. At the end of April, what we found so far is 86 people that were registered to vote that shouldn't, that were non-U.S. citizens, 46 that have voted. As you know, elections get decided by a few votes sometimes. So it's wrong. It's a crime. I don't want any Florida voter that has a right to vote, their vote diluted by somebody that doesn't have the right to vote, a non-U.S. citizen voting. This is not a partisan issue. It's not a Republican, Democrat, Independent issue. It's the law of Florida, and we should enforce the laws of our state.
You mean that this is the law already on the books?
Should.
You're saying this is the law already on the books. I want to talk about a related but not the same issue here, which is a recent survey that shows some 73% of Americans found that requiring voter ID at the poll is a good idea. What do you say to that? Is that the right thing to do? It's certainly being hotly debated in Texas right now.
Absolutely. I mean, shoot, somebody told me the other day that if you want to go to Michelle Obama's book signing, you have to show photo ID. I mean, your right to vote is pretty darn important. We should know who's voting. We don't want anybody that doesn't have the right to vote to dilute somebody that has a legitimate right to vote. So absolutely, you should show ID.
Well, and, you know, this is one of the great privileges of our democracy at the end of the day. And, you know, we treat it so dismissively. You have to have a license to operate a motor vehicle, but you can willy-nilly waltz into any polling area in the country and practically vote.
That's not right. I mean, and, you know, we want to defend the right to vote. That's part of America. I mean, we can't dilute your right to vote by somebody that doesn't have the right to vote. I mean, look at how much effort you put into making sure you figure out who you're going to vote for. You might help the candidate. You might invest in the candidate. And then we're going to dilute your vote with somebody that doesn't have the right to vote. That's not right. That's not American. We want honest, fair elections.
Now, this isn't just a fight between you and the federal government. This is also a fight between you and the 67 counties who have elected supervisors who oversee these elections, who feel like they're either caught in the middle or they don't know what to do, and they're sort of dragging their heels on your initiative. What would you say to them?
Well, look, they're in the same position I'm in. I have an obligation to enforce the law of Florida. The law of Florida is only U.S. citizens have the right to vote. Non-U.S. citizens don't have the right to vote. I'm comfortable that over time they will do their job, do the same thing that I'm doing. They will make sure their roles are right, that they can make sure that they have an honest, fair election, because it's their job to do that.
Governor, do you expect to prevail with this lawsuit?
Absolutely. I mean, if you go and look at it, it says in the federal statute that we can use that database. We have a right to the database, and we can use it for voter registration. So we're doing the right thing. I can't imagine anybody thinking that a non-U.S. citizen should have the right to vote in our state or in our country. We want to have honest, fair elections. I don't get the right to vote in Italy or Spain or France or another country. Why would somebody that doesn't have a right to vote in our state have the right to vote in one of our elections?
Well, Governor Scott, thanks for coming on tonight. Big story. I'm sure we'll play even bigger tomorrow. We'll continue to follow the story, the ins and outs of this. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.